So today I'm going to be doing a video on all things related to the injector pump on the PX series of Ford Rangers. And I'm going to be covering the removal process, the installation process, the special tools required. I'm going to be demonstrating on this engine here, as I'll get some pretty good camera angles in disassembling it and stuff like that. And also a couple of things that I'm going to cover from here to actually get to the injector pump, because it sits right down the bottom there if you're coming in from the front, but from the top you got to remove all this stuff here to get to it. So there is a little bit involved, but in saying that, it is a pretty straightforward process if you have the right tools. So let's get stuck into it. So the first special tool you'll need is the injection pump sprocket locking tool, which is just a plastic locking tool like that with two little, what do you call them, dowels? So I bought this from a company called Oswide Tools Australia. That's their name there. And the price of that was $80.55 delivered to your door. The second tool that you'll need is a pump sprocket puller. This one's for a Ford Transit, but they share the same injector pump. So essentially what that does is just pull a sprocket off the actual injector pump itself. And that was from a company called Responsive Engineering Australia. That's their phone number. And it was $76.20 delivered. So essentially these are the two tools that you'll need to do this job. So when coming in from the top here, there's a couple of things that you'll have to remove that are going to make your life a lot easier when doing this job. And the first one is going to be your top intercooler hose, which is just a Phillips head screwdriver there and down there. Your top radiator hose, once again another Phillips there, just some pliers there. You'll probably have to drain your coolant before you do that. The next thing is your shroud, which is just clipped on by a couple of clips down there. Yeah, down there it's got a clip there and a clip on the other side. And also there's a bottom part to the shroud which you can't really see, but when you look down there you'll see that there's two clips there that just remove the bottom part of the shroud. Once you do that and you move this here, which just unclips like that and pulls out, you'll be able to remove that shroud out of the way, and that'll give you access to the front cover of the injector pump, which is that there. In saying that, you'll probably have to remove your serpentine belt as well, which is just a 1/4 inch socket on the tensioner down there. It's probably going to make your life a lot easier if you remove the fuel filter housing as well as this fuel filter bracket. It's not a necessity to do, but it's probably just going to make it a bit easier. You can still remove the injector pump by just removing the throttle body and the intake manifold together. And I do have a video on my channel on how to move this filter housing and the bracket, and I might throw a link in the description now. So going back to this engine, the injector pump itself is located in behind this plastic cover, which you should be able to just turn off like that. And this is where we'll be using the locking tool to lock that sprocket, so we don't have to remove this front timing cover or don't have to mess with the timing. Ford have made it very simple on this car. If you have to remove the injector pump, to just put the locking tool in there, and it keeps the timing and the sprocket in place where it is, so you can then come from the back and remove the injector pump that way. There's two clips here for the fuel filter housing that you want to remove. They just unplug same way as your fuel filter housing does rather, like that. You should be able to just lift them up from there. Just feed them down and out of the way like so. There we go. And there's two up here for the EGR. So now with that out of the way, as I zoom in, you can see we've got two fuel lines on the injector pump itself. One there, as well as two plugs, one there, one there. So to get this fuel line off, you've got a tab on the bottom and the tab on the top. To get them off, you just push them in and then pull back, and they just slide straight off like that. You will need to remove the EGR valve here just to get to an intake manifold bolt which is behind it. So I'm using I think it's a T40 Torx, not too sure, but you'll figure it out. Ah, damn ya. Then the intake manifold should be all good to come off. So once the intake manifold is off, you've now got really good access to the back of the injector pump, which you can see right there. So while we're here, you've got a 17mm there and a 17mm up here for the injector pump line, and there's a 8mm there and an 8mm there that you've got to undo as well. So I thought I'd just point out, with your sprocket locking tool, you've got 4 holes. You've got 2 that are closer in, which is these 2, and you've got 2 that are further out. So just mark the ones that are further out, because they're the ones that we'll be using. Because if I flip this around and I try to put this in there, it won't go in, but it will go into the ones that are further out. So just take note of those 2. Next up, what you want to do is to grab these 2 dowel things, whatever you may call them, and they have an Allen key head up the top. So what you want to do is you want to spin the bottom one all the way to the bottom like that, and just take the top one off completely for now, and do that on both of them. So what you'll be doing is just putting it from the back like that in, and then getting the top one with this cutout bit facing in like that, and just tightening it up like so by hand. And do that for both sides. Once that's done and it's all set up, just put that to the side for now. This is a 21mm bolt with a reverse thread. So to undo it, we're going to actually be turning clockwise. And to tighten it up, we're going to be turning it anti-clockwise. So with your 21mm, there we go. So you can take that completely out. It's not going to go anywhere. It's actually sitting on the injector pump itself, and now it needs to be pulled off. So going back to our special tool, it comes with a little dowel like that. And what you want to do next is just thread that dowel in like so into there. And now we'll be just setting up our sprocket puller like so. Just going to be using a shifter to pull this sprocket off. There we go. So as you can see, that sprocket is now loosely in there. Next up, we'll be lining up these two dowels with the two holes here when we fit our sprocket tool. So you may need to turn the engine a little bit just to get it perfectly lined up. I think I'm a couple of mil out here, so whoa. That looks pretty good. So as you can see, they're all threaded all the way in now, and essentially that sprocket is now locked in place. You can now remove that center dowel that's in there just by hand. It's not gonna, the sprocket itself is not gonna go anywhere. It's locked in there. There we go. So once you've got your sprocket tool on, the injector pump itself is held on by a couple of, you got 3 10mm. You got one there, you've got one underneath there, and there is one more hidden bolt right down the back there. Hopefully you can see that in shot right there. So that's probably the hardest one to get to. That one there, as well as these 2 T40 Torx that hold the bracket that bolts to the actual engine block. So that's what holds the injector pump on. Off comes the bracket. That's the hidden bolt. Lucky last. So here we have the injector pump. Wasn't too bad to get out. There was a bolt down here, which is this one here. That was probably the hardest one to get to. It's sort of tucked in behind everything. There was also a heat shield that came off that sits in there like that. But all in all, it wasn't too bad. So generally, when these injector pumps fail, what fails in them is the plunger spring in here. I might throw a video of some footage that I found online of a broken plunger spring. And essentially what happens, it breaks inside and then it's pretty much useless after that. You can buy the springs by themselves, but I've only seen them for sale in Thailand. Haven't seen any for sale in Australia. So most people just end up just swapping out the whole injector pump as it is when they do fail. So looking back into our engine block, as you can see, the sprocket there is held in place by the sprocket tool. Hasn't lost timing or anything like that. It's just sitting there ready for the new pump to go in. Bit of a front angle shot. You can see straight through there. Just thought I'd mention, when you're refitting the injector pump, you don't have to time it or anything like that. It just goes straight in without any problems. So when you're doing your reassembly, it's just going to be the exact opposite of what we just done. Just want to clean up your surfaces a bit, as well as on the injector pump. Just get it nice and clean. So it goes back in. And you want to put all 3 bolts back in and just slowly tighten them up as you go around in circles. You don't really want to force one of them on. You really want to do all 3 in a circular motion to get them all on at the same time. So once you've tightened all the bolts up to spec, you can put the heat shield back on. Just comes in through there like so. Just got to make sure you get it on that last bolt down the bottom. It might be a bit difficult to find. But there we go, it's on like so. Just leave it there for now. When you put that bracket back on here, that heat shield will be held in place like that. So once all the back's been tightened up, all you got left now is just your main bolt for the sprocket, which you got to keep in mind is a reverse thread. So don't forget to tighten that to spec. I will try and throw the torque spec settings for both the injector pump and the front sprocket in the description, so you don't have to search for that. All that's left now is just to remove the sprocket tool. Just be careful not to go too far, or they will drop out and you will have to remove your front timing cover. There we go. That's how you pop them out. Like I said, it's crucial you don't go too far, otherwise you'll lose this inside the timing cover. Then you'll have to pull the whole timing cover off and dig it out, which you really don't want to do because you'll have to reseal it. So that pretty much wraps up the injector pump video. The rest of the assembly process is just the opposite of what we did before of disassembly. So just follow those instructions and you won't have a problem